So, today I want to talk to you about how to be a challenge to your girlfriend. Now, obviously, during the dating phase, if you've been dating the smart way and you've been following some of the stuff on my website, such as my new program, Introvert Dating Success Academy, one of the things that you've learned is how to be patient during that 3 months that you're going to be dating this girl to get her into a relationship. And that means applying challenge, not being always there, et cetera, et cetera. But what happens once she becomes the girlfriend? What happens once you're in a relationship and you start seeing her more, you start talking to her on the phone and texting her more? Is it going to be as easy to keep a challenge going? And how is that even realistically possible when you have somebody that wants to see you all the time? Not to worry. I'm going to give you 8 tips that you can use in order to continue to be a positive challenge to a girlfriend, so that way she continues to have high attraction for you and it continues to even rise and increase during the course of the relationship. And by the way, if you need help on how to become a better introvert dater, you can go to introvertdatingsuccess.com. Check out my programs, check out my eBooks, check out my freebie webinars, all of which are designed to help you date as your natural introverted self while still getting your precious alone time. So the first tip I have for you on how to be a challenge to your girlfriend is to stop continually doing things to try to win her over. Obviously, when you're dating her, you're going to be wanting to do positive things so she has a positive feel about you. But there's going to be points where you're going to want to do things or say things that may not necessarily be something that's going to win this other person over. But you cannot live your life in your head thinking everything you say or do has to be to the benefit and of the pleasure of this other person. This is not to say that you're purposely trying to do things to piss them off, but if you have interest or things, or you're interested in certain subjects or topics, or you want to say certain things and it's not pleasing to her, well, guess what? You need to be able to do those things and not fear that if you say them, you're going to lose her. Because here's the thing, as much as a woman may like you, if she feels as though you're only doing things purposely to win her over, well, you're not going to be the truthful version of yourself. You're not going to be that guy that she fell in love with. And so it's perfectly fine to not be that guy all the time. And this is going to challenge her, because even if there's times where you're doing things that she doesn't like or saying things or whatever, she's still going to still be like, well, even though I don't like these things, ultimately, in terms of how the overall percentage of stuff that he does that I like, I'm still going to continue to like this person. Okay. So that's the first thing, is that don't try to have everything be with the design of trying to win this woman over, because you could actually end up losing her interest in the process by not being your true self. The second way to be a challenge to your girlfriend is to set boundaries and learn to say no. Okay. Women actually appreciate when you set boundaries, even though it's challenging to them, because they may want to say a certain thing to you. They may want to act a certain way towards you. And when you say no, it can put them on pause. But they need to feel that and see that. Why? Because for a lot of women, if they're looking at you as a potential person they're going to mate with and have kids with, they need to know that you're going to be able to set boundaries with the children that you guys have for their own safety, to be more respectful, et cetera, et cetera. And if you're not able to do that with her, how is she going to have faith that you're going to be able to do that with some little ones that come along that are going to just walk all over you? They're not going to know that. So that's why they're going to test you and test your boundaries at times. And this is when it becomes very important as a guy to learn when it's okay to say no. Because if somebody's doing something that's disrespectful to you or is out of the bounds of what you feel is respectful to you, then you have to say no. And so if you're able to set boundaries and learn to say no to women, then even though it's going to be a challenge to them, it's a positive challenge that they need to see, so they're able to see how much an effective leader you'll be able to be in the relationship. The third way to be a challenge to your girlfriend is to learn to state your truth, even if it opposes her truth. So let's say, for example, something political happens and you feel one way about it and she feels another way about it. Well, there's no need for you to think that you got to suddenly agree with her opinion about some stuff, because the reality is you might have a different opinion. And that's not to say that yours is right and hers is wrong, but it just might be different. And if you're the guy that ends up trying to, change your mind or agree with everything that she thinks or feels, well, now again, you're not being your authentic self. Women would rather date the authentic version of you and know your authentic thoughts and feelings about stuff than have somebody that's going to just bow down to whatever they think or feel. But with that said, when you do that, you are going to be challenged. They might come to you and ask you why it is that your opinion is different or why you feel a different way about something. And believe it or not, women actually like positive debates. In fact, it's going to be better conversation-wise to be able to have things that you disagree on every so often, to have more in-depth conversations, because women like dialogue. They bond better through talking. And sometimes you have longer conversations and better talks when you don't have an opinion that is the same as hers. It might also enlighten her to think a different way about things. So if you're not doing that, if you're not giving your truth and explaining yourself and what your view of the world is, then you could actually be really closing down her ability to learn more about the world and expand her knowledge, all right? So that's why it's important to keep your truth and keep whatever your thoughts and feelings are as your own versus trying to just change them because you want to be pleasing to her. The fifth way to be a challenge to your girlfriend is to swat away any silly requests she has that don't gel with you or don't make sense. And so many guys fall into this trap of they get into a relationship and then the woman says, hey, I want you to give up your hanging out with your guy friends. I want you to give up playing these instruments. I want you to give up going to these certain places. And men will do that because they think it's going to please her. But what you actually end up doing is you become the non-truth version of yourself, but also you lose those parts of you that, unbeknownst to her, she actually fell for. And a lot of times women won't know that that's true until you give up all those things, and then they end up dumping you. And part of it is because they start saying things like, well, he's just not the man that I thought he was when we first dated. Well, yeah, because she made all these silly requests, but you agreed to them. So your challenge in this situation is going to be having to push back and say, babe, not giving up my friends, not giving up my instruments, not giving up going to these places. And if you don't like it, then this isn't going to work out. You have to be the one that's not going to be fearful of walking away from any situation that is not working for you. Women are actually more willing to stay with a guy that demonstrates that he is indifferent to being in the relationship and is willing to walk away if she makes silly requests of him. Because that's a guy that's going to be more respected than a guy that's going to just bend to her will. You as the guy are supposed to be the leader in the relationship. So she's able to make these dumb requests that you follow, you're not following her, and that can cause a woman to become unattracted to you real fast. The sixth way to be a challenge to your girlfriend is to make it seem at times like she has to convince you to do certain activities. So like, let's say, for example, a new Chinese food restaurant opens in your area. She comes to you and says, hey, I think we ought to try out this new Chinese food restaurant. There are times that when that happens, rather than just saying, yes, let's go to the restaurant, you should stop and say, well, wait, why should we go to the restaurant? Like, I don't know. I mean, is this Chinese food place going to be really that great? Like, what's going to be better about this place versus this other place that we normally go to? At which point, she now has to convince you as to why you guys need to try this thing out. Now, you may got to do this with every single thing that she brings to your attention, but it is good every so often to stop and pause. Because what you don't want to do is fall into this habit of every time she mentions doing something, you just say yes. Because now that makes you predictable, and it could get to a point where she actually stops asking you altogether. She's going to just assume that everything she mentions is going to be fine. And that can also, that once it becomes a monotonous behaviors can become very dull to women, even if they're positive ones. So if every so often you have to stop and challenge her on why you should do this thing or make it feel like she has to convince you to do it, that's going to allow her, to have more dialogue with you, which again, women bond through talking. And also it's going to allow her to feel as though her convincing you is, when she does it, it's going to have a bigger reward for her in the end. Okay. So you're actually doing yourself a positive service to her when you are from time to time, not just agreeing right away, but making it seem like she has to convince you to do the thing that she wants to do. The seventh way to be a challenge to your girlfriend is to not always be so readily available. Now, ideally, your life is busy enough to where you have projects you're working on, you're chasing your purpose, you have friends and family you're seeing. So that means that you can't always answer phone calls back right away. You can't always text her back right away. If she mentions she wants to do an activity, there'll be times where you say, hey, I've already got something scheduled for this time or this day, so we have to do it another day. All those things do one thing. It puts you in the light of being a busy man who has a life outside of her. And so many women turn away men because their whole life becomes her. And as much as you think that you want to be there for women all the time, the reality is she fell for you in part because she thought that you had a life outside of her. And she wants to be able to see that life. She wants to be able to see you living your life, trying to obtain your purpose, trying to do things other than be around her all the time. And realistically, most women have stuff to do too, okay? But when you're a guy that's readily available and you're able to be at your beck and call and hang out with her all the time, that can cause burnout in a relationship real quick. So if you've ever been that guy that's like, you met a woman and you hung out with her nonstop for like 2 or 3 weeks straight, and then she suddenly lost interest, that's why. Because you were too available, you made yourself available to answer all phone calls and all texts, and she lost interest. Versus if you're the guy that goes away every so often, which now gives her time to think about you, it gives her time to wonder what's going on with you, it gives her time to wonder why she hasn't heard from you, and all that wondering does is keep you in her head. If she's constantly thinking about you, that means she's constantly thinking about wanting to have you around. And the thought of wanting you around is oftentimes more powerful than you actually being around all the time. And then the eighth way to be a challenge to your girlfriend, and this is very good for introverts, is to continue to enjoy non-negotiable alone time. And this means that when you start dating women, you have to tell them as an introvert, hey, I'm an introvert, so very often I like to have my alone time to just re-energize myself and recharge. Now, what's going to happen is once you get into a relationship, sometimes women will think, well, we're in a relationship, so we can hang out all the time, and he doesn't need that silly alone time anymore. And this is when you have to double down on, hey, babe, I can't see you today. I just want to have a day to myself. Or, hey, babe, I'm going to go away for a few hours because I need to kind of adjust some things or do some things on my own. Or I'm going to this place out of town just for a solo drive or whatever. And when you do this, there are women that are going to be upset and mad about this at first, okay? So I'm telling you this because when you first do this, and a woman comes back to you with like, well, but it just means you don't want me around, or blah, 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 blah. That is a tactic to try to make you change up your ability to get alone time. If you fall for this early on, you will have a hard time getting your alone time later. And more importantly, it's not going to give her time to ever adjust to the idea of you getting alone time. So at the first case where you are asking for your alone time, I'm not even asking, when you tell her, I'm going to be getting some alone time today, and she tries to fight you on it, you have to do everything you can in your power to be like, well, babe, I mean, if that's how you feel about it, I'm sorry, but I still need my alone time. It's nothing personal. It's nothing about you. I care about you immensely, but this is what I need for my mental health to make sure that I'm my best self. If I don't get that alone time, then I'm not going to be my best self around you. And then you got to go do your alone time. And the first few times you do this, admittedly, it's going to be a challenge to her because she's not going to understand how is it that you can want to be alone but still like her. Because women sometimes take it personally. Even women introverts take it personally like, hey, he should want to be around me because we're dating and I'm so great. But you have to fight through that challenging part in order to get to the other end where it becomes more of the norm, okay? So the biggest challenge you're going to have as an introvert is wanting to get your alone time and her fighting it. But you have to go through the fight of getting your alone time so it's an established thing to whereby it won't be a big fight later. But if you do that, I promise you, it's going to be better for you. It's going to be better for a relationship. And hey, here's a little tip. You can reward a woman for allowing you to have that alone time. For example, you'll say you get a day to yourself. The next time you see her, give her a big kiss. You hook it up really nice in the bedroom and say, hey, babe, that's just my way of saying thanks. Let me have that alone time. Next time you get your alone time, when you come back to see her, you make her a really nice meal, take her out on a fancy night on the town and say, hey, this is just, when I get my alone time, I just feel so respected that I want to treat you better. After 2 or 3 times of that, where you do alone time, you give her a reward. You get another more alone time, you get a reward. She will be coming to you and saying, hey, babe, do you need your alone time today? Hey, babe, I know you probably want some time to yourself, so I'm going to give you that day, because she's going to realize this actually benefits her. But you don't get that if you're not challenging her in the first place to be able to get it. So hopefully those 8 tips will help you to better establish yourself as a challenge, even when you're in the midst of a relationship. And it's things you can do that are only going to allow her to increase her respect and admiration and attraction for you. If you found the info in this episode to be helpful, please show your support by clicking on the tip jar tab, the link of which can be found at the website and in the description below. Be sure to like, share, subscribe, and comment on this episode and catch new episodes right here on YouTube or wherever podcasts can be found. In the meantime, be sure to check out my other episodes so you too can learn to date as your introverted self while still getting your precious alone time. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time. Peace.